Hey everybody, a few years ago I did a video for sufferers of ringing in the ears, showing how to do something called vagus nerve stimulation therapy, which is basically an exercise that you perform on yourself along with playing back an audio tone in order to treat your tinnitus. And I mentioned in the original video that this is something that anybody could do from the comfort of their own home using computer software. Or potentially a mobile app too. And you could see the software that I used for my original demonstration called Reaper. It's a digital audio workstation, aka music production software. And the reason that I chose this for my demonstration was that, first of all, it's free. And second of all, it is very robust. It has a large variety of tools which would enable you to not only pin down your tinnitus frequency, but also perform the therapy. That includes things like a piano roll, a spectrum analyzer, and obviously things to create loops. And so it has pretty much everything you would need in order to do the therapy, but one thing it is not exactly is convenient, and not everybody is inclined toward this sort of technical nonsense like I am. And so in this video that I'm doing now, I would like to get into some of the alternatives for other platforms, things which are simpler, things which will help you also quickly identify your tinnitus frequency and get right into the therapy itself. Pretty much anywhere you are, anywhere that you can take a mobile phone with you, whether that be in bed, on the couch, in the kitchen, in your bathroom, on the bus, if you want people to see you bearing down, doing that kind of grunting exercise or coughing or whatever you want to stimulate the vagus nerve with. If you want to do that in public, you know, that's your business. Now you can do it. We're going to talk about those apps here in this video. I'm going to demonstrate some for the Android phone, which I have here. You see that on the right side of your screen. I'm playing a cool little psychedelic fractal pattern for you while we wait. I'm going to show you the apps in just a few minutes. But first, yeah, I'd like to mention that also afterward, I'll be getting into some of the comments, some of the feedback that I've gotten, both good and bad. Mostly good, thankfully. Lots of people with either simple or complex tone tinnitus have been helped by this. We've discovered that this can even help people with more complex cases, because it really starts with just locating the most dominant frequency first and going from there, eliminating note by note. And lots of you have picked up on that and had quite a lot of success with it. And I'll be showing you those comments a little later on. But first, I'd really love to mention all the progress that's been made in the knowledge of the vagus nerve and vagus nerve therapy since doing my original video. And, you know, I've gained some access to some scientific papers, and I didn't have access to those back then, so I couldn't really get into it so much. I just kind of made this based on reading a quick newsletter. I called it a paper, but really it was just a newsletter which summarized what they did in their experiments on rats. And I went with that and I tried it on myself, and it worked, and based on that I made this video. So it just goes to show you that you don't have to be extremely knowledgeable in order to help other people. But now I have, as I said, read some actual papers more recently, and the implications of the vagus nerve are really astounding. And to give you an idea of that, just listen to this summary of a paper by R.H. Howland at the Pittsburgh Medical Center in 2014. He says, the effectiveness of various forms of non-invasive transcutaneous VNS, that is vagus nerve stimulation, for epilepsy, depression, primary headaches, and other conditions has not been investigated beyond small pilot studies, but the relationship between depression, inflammation, metabolic syndrome, and heart disease might be mediated by the vagus nerve. Furthermore, VNS deserves further study for its potentially favorable effects on cardiovascular, cerebrovascular, metabolic, and other physiological biomarkers associated with depression, morbidity, and mortality. So, wow, that's a mouthful, and it really also makes you think, because the medical profession has been telling us for a long time that there are only so many things that we could do for ourselves without relying on going to the doctor. And I'm not saying that you should avoid the doctor or anything like that, but what I'm saying is that there are implications here as far as what we can do ourselves, because they've been telling us that really the three main staples of improving your health that you can have control over is really stress reduction or stress management, exercise, get more exercise, don't be a sedentary person, and eat a much better diet. And among those things, most people have trouble with at least one of those. You know, we all have our guilty pleasures. We love our desserts and such, and being sedentary may be unavoidable much of the time for people with office jobs. You know, there are things like stand-up chairs, micro breaks, micro pauses, or whatever you want to say. But when it comes down to it, we are kind of doomed to a certain kind of lifestyle. So it really would help if there were something else that could help us avoid these diseases. And it turns out that that may be the case. Vagus nerve stimulation may play a role in avoiding disease and helping us live a better life. And I'd like to point out, I will be pointing out in a future video, I'm not going to get into it now, but I'd like to point out that something resembling vagus nerve stimulation has been practiced by ancient cultures for probably thousands of years. And so it's probably played an important role in humanity's survival and many areas of our life, like our spirituality as well. So once again, the implication of all this is that our modern focus on exercise and diet as the main staples of health and well-being could be woefully inadequate. And so you can understand, given all these different areas that VNS has the power to help, how it could help something like tinnitus. And the cool thing about what we're doing here in this video, in coming up with a therapy to treat the ringing in our ears, is that through our ability to test the therapy on something which gives quick observable results in lowering that ringing in our ears, it helps us see that it would be powerful in these other areas as well. It helps us see that it probably works in things like depression, for example, which isn't always so easy to pinpoint progress in. So that's about it for that right now. It's time to get into the applications. I'm going to just close this off here. Go back to the original video. This is really your starting point for anything you might have missed to date. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time repeating myself, so anything you've missed you can find by checking the links in this video. Description, that is, including the original video, Home Tinnitus Cure with Music Software Based on Scientific Studies. And secondly, the video that I did more recently called What Are Inner Worlds? Because that goes into all these other areas too. My channel is not only going to be about vagus nerve stimulation or audio software things. These are just tools to help us explore the potential of the power of our brain and our consciousness. And so I'm going to be getting into areas like frequencies as they pertain to the brain. There are many different frequencies that a brain operates on. So all that is covered in this What Are Inner Worlds video. Check out those two videos first. Those will bring you up to speed if you've missed anything. And then follow me here with further advances in how we can apply this kind of therapy much quicker. And we're going to do that right now without further ado here. So I'll just load up the first application that I have here. I have downloaded two apps called, the first is Simple Tone Generator. And really, these aren't apps which are specifically for treating tinnitus. What they are is tone generators. And they can be used for music or, you know, all kinds of things related to sound and science. But what we can see here is that there's a play button, a stop button, subtest. You don't need to worry about that. Plus and minus hertz. What you can actually do is use this slider at the bottom of the screen. And I'm going to start off with a mid-range pitch. And then we'll hit the play button. I hope you can hear that. You should be able to. And I don't know, is that a... yeah. Okay, we'll stop that for now. But I'd like to point out that there are 4 different shapes that you see there. And these are 4 different types of synthesis, wave synthesis. The first is the sine wave, which is a very pure tone, and it's the most similar to simple tone ringing in the ears. It's a very pure sound. And then the next one is a square wave. I'll play you an example of that. As you can hear, it's much louder and more abrasive. And the triangle, it's pretty similar, slightly sharper than the sine wave. Compare those. You can hear it has a bit of a sharper sound to it, but it's still somewhat pleasant. And then we have the saw. I'm going to have to turn down the volume on this one too. So compare between all those 4. And what I'd like to bring up there is that for the purposes of our therapy, we're going to focus mainly on the sine wave, because that is kind of the equivalent of using a fine laser scalpel. We're doing a delicate surgery here. We don't want to bludgeon our brain with sound. And that may be the reason why some people are not having success, why they make their tinnitus tone worse when they attempt to follow along. They may be selecting the wrong types, and I want to tell you, please stick to the sine wave, as that's all we're going to need, no matter how complex your tinnitus is, whether it be a tone or a buzzing or a whooshing sound. We may be able to use that in order to treat, depending on how wide of a frequency range it is. So, yeah, stick to that, and just please be careful whatever you do with the volume and everything like that. All right, I'll play again and turn down the volume. Go back to the sine wave, and then using the slider here, we can go up, locate our tinnitus frequency. Mine is around here somewhere, 9,000, maybe 8,500, somewhere between there. And really all you need to do is memorize that number in hertz, as you can see. And yeah, so if you remember that number, then anytime you load this app up, you can go directly ahead and just hit play and begin doing the exercise. That's about enough of that. And really that's all there is to this app. Load up the other one for you here. It's called Tuning Fork. And it's pretty much the same principle. We have waveform, 4 different types. Once again, sine wave, square, triangle, sawtooth. And we'll stick to the sine wave. And what this app offers is additionally, in addition to the frequency selection, you can now select between two different modes. The default it will come with is direct. It just shows you the frequency, just as in the other app. But then you can select pitch notation. And it starts at a default of A4, that is the A note in the 4th octave. And that's at 440 hertz. That's the modern frequency of the A4 pitch. It used to be 432 hertz, I believe, and there have been some conspiracies about this as far as why it was changed. many people believe that 432 resonates as a healing frequency with the human body, and it was changed to 440 in order to cause disease. But I don't know about all that, to be honest with you. So it starts there. It starts on the A4, and what you can do is, once again, hit play. And I'm probably going, whoops, I'm going to want to turn it down a little bit. And then we can use the buttons to the left and right. You have the flat button and the sharp button, which is really just going up and down the spectrum. So press sharp and you will start going up through the octaves, and you will hear the volume rising as we go up further, approaching the 3000 hertz, because the human hearing is such that it follows a curve of frequency response, and so this is the frequency that our ears are typically most sensitive to, and can go higher and higher and higher until we're going to hit a roadblock here. You see, we have hit a roadblock at C in the 9th octave, and that is 8,300. Yeah, 8,300 hertz. So if your tinnitus is higher than that, then sorry, as far as this app goes, you're kind of out of luck. But it's still pretty handy in that it lets you see the equivalent note of your tinnitus. And so I would recommend it for that purpose for people who have a slightly lower tinnitus pitch. And that's about it for the Android apps. There are many others out there like this, but there are none as of yet which are really for treating tinnitus specifically. These are all just multi-purpose tone generators. Then we also have one on the PC, which I'll just load up here. Oh, actually, yeah, I wanted to show you this one first. I did this by accident. So, yeah, this is for the iOS iPhone. It's called Tone Generator by TMsoft, and this was suggested to me by one of the comments in the original video, one of our community members, shall we say. And it pretty much has the same kind of stuff to it. Has the frequency selection, lets you go all through the range of human hearing between 20 and 20,000 hertz, and has a volume slider as well. And I'm not sure if this one lets you select the type of wave or not. And by the way, those waveforms, I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but those are used in pretty much every form of electronic music for synthesis, creating what you know as a synth. Those are used quite a lot, and even the pure sine wave is used in quite a lot of music. Like there's a Russian band called PPK who really loves them, and personally I love them too. They have a very pure, kind of spacey kind of sound to them. And yeah, in video games like the Unreal series loves that a lot too. But anyway, yeah, I don't know if it lets you choose the type of tone, but it pretty much has the same features. Then, yeah, it's also worth mentioning that I believe that's free. I don't think this guy would have recommended it if it weren't. So, going to the web now, and same one again. Recently bookmarked. Online tone generator. Nope, not that one. Not having the best luck here. Alright, third time's the charm. So, I'll give you the URL for this one later. And it's not worth me repeating it right now because it is kind of... oh, actually, it's a... No, it's not showing me the right URL. Okay, anyway, I'll put it in the description. And really, all you need to know is that it's the same principles here. You really want to turn down the volume before you play this one, by the way, because it's loud. And many of these websites, for whatever reason, are like that. So hit play with your volume at like 5% or so. And you start with 440 Hertz once again. Same as in the last one I showed you. And you can also go through these kind of presets. And the presets are kind of limited to the 8th octave at maximum, even though you can go higher than that using the slider. And if you wanted to, if your tinnitus frequency is like this high, you can still locate it. Let's see if I can hear it. Yeah, you can. Thankfully, I still have my hearing in that range, so it works. I think the slider is really the best way to do it. And you also have the waveform type thing here, which you can just leave alone, trust me. Once again, we really want to be careful. We don't want to make our tinnitus any worse. So it's worth noting that you should just be patient, attack this thing one frequency at a time, and eventually you will find quite a bit of relief. There's no need to go overboard with this and try and eliminate all of your tinnitus, because really that's a pursuit that you'll just probably never end up achieving. So sometimes you got to know to quit while you're ahead, just like me with doing this video, by the way. So that's about it for those, and I'm gonna get to the comments now before we end this. So this first commenter from a week ago, this is a guy who I've had quite a few conversations with by now. He is somebody who is actually he's very enthusiastic about this therapy, and that's kind of what finally gave me the kick in the ass I needed to make this video, this follow-up. And so thank you for that, James. And what I want to mention is that he's been talking about developing an actual app which is specifically for our form of therapy that we're doing here. And we've been going over a lot of features together, potential features, both for locating the tinnitus frequency, creating presets, and then actually performing the therapy in different ways. So this is hopefully going to be, if it all comes together, a very powerful app. And of course, James, he gets full credit for this. It's going to be a free app. Nobody's trying to make any money off this. And he's only doing it for iPhone, iOS. And the thing is that if he succeeds with it, he's a busy guy. He has a job and everything. If he succeeds, if he gets it done, then we would love it. I would love it, especially because I'm an Android user. We'd love it if somebody would be able to port it over to Android. So if you're interested in helping with that, we'd love that. So let's get to his comment here. His original comment says, thank you so much for posting this video, you brilliant man. I don't know how brilliant I am, James, but really, I just love to take whatever knowledge I do have and be able to use it to help people. If I can do that, then it gives meaning to my life, basically. Hands to heart, it cured my tinnitus. It's truly amazing how quickly your body responds with this technique. Almost magical. If I ever met you in person, I'd give you a hug. Oh, well, that's very sweet of you, James, and we can give each other a virtual hug here. Oh, maybe I better not. I almost tore my headphones out of their jacket. All right. In his follow-up to that original comment, he says a lot of good stuff here, really. But one thing in particular stuck out to me. He said, another interesting thing to note is that when I was performing the vagal maneuver in bed, it felt much like a sit-up, so I started doing actual sit-ups or crunches from a partial sitting position with pillows to prop me up. After that, something accidental and magical occurred. Oh, I bet. I inadvertently held my breath during a crunch, and as a result created inner ear pressure. I could feel the air pressure moving my ear tympanic membrane. Complicated term. That is eardrum. I'm glad you clarified that, Jim. Basically the same feeling you get when you clear plugged ears by closing your mouth and blow to equalize or pop your ears. I noticed that as I applied more and more air pressure, that there became a point where all the tinnitus frequencies would diminish and cancel simultaneously. That's pretty cool. Ever notice when you yawn your hearing diminishes? Similar to that feeling. Anyway, when I started including this tympanic stretching into the mix, I found I could completely lower the tinnitus noise floor to deeper and deeper levels. Hope this information helps somebody. I'm sure it will, James, and thanks for sharing that. Finally, I have a tool to fight this beast. Thanks again for this video. I'm very glad that I could help you, and I'm very glad for all the conversations that we've been having and all the information that you've been sharing with me. It's going to be very helpful for me, I feel, even though I must admit I don't understand all of it right now. There's really so much to absorb, man. So it goes on here for a few comments, and like I said, I've shared, and he has shared a lot of information, and we're working on developing, hopefully, an application together. The next commenter, Tim Hendren, says, "Thank you so much for this video. My tinnitus has been very long-term and symmetrical." I guess by symmetrical, maybe you mean that it's been in both ears? I don't know. "It could have started after shooting a .357 Magnum without ear protection." Yeah, it could have been that, I would guess. "I gave my plugs to my young nephew and helped him to shoot 6 rounds. My ears rang for almost 2 days. Ouch. In using the free software and utilizing your technique, I covered 16 tones." And so it seems like this guy's taken what I said about starting with a dominant frequency and going from there. And that's an excellent approach, I think, because really you can cover a lot of ground that way with minimal risk. I covered 16 tones. A few may have been duplicates, maybe. I've gone from practically unbearable most of the time to just a low volume, tolerable degree of tinnitus. Wonderful. I look forward to repeating this protocol over the next few weeks to see if I can completely eliminate my tinnitus. Well, Tim, I hope that you're able to do that. Although, as I may have mentioned already, we should probably just focus on management and being able to get to a point where we can tolerate getting through the day and where we can live a normal life and not focus too much on completion. Although if we do achieve that, it's great, no doubt. But I just want to kind of tell people, temper your expectations a little bit. Maybe we need to be realistic about this. Nate Croteau says, "Holy crap, dude. This is working. Has anyone had lasting effects from this exercise?" Well, I think we've established that some people have, but if you need some evidence of that, there's one case in particular, an interesting fellow who is a session musician for quite a few bands in the United States, one of them being the Supremes. Yeah, he's a trumpet player, and so he plays that kind of music, and he's been doing it for quite a long time. And he went out of his way to contact me via Facebook. He hunted me down on my music Facebook page there, sent me a private message, and let me know how much my original video helped him out. And that really made me feel good. And he posted a follow-up here a little while later, several months later. His name is Larry Wiseman. And what he says is, "My update. I used this treatment several months ago, and I could say that I only had trouble in my right ear. After doing many treatments over a couple of months, I retrained my brain to totally eliminate all the high-pitched tones. I still have one very, very low tone, which has not completely gone away, but I can tolerate it." That's a good attitude, Larry. "I would say to anyone that if you try this treatment, be patient." And once again, I agree with you, Larry, because patience is a virtue, and so many people, when they try ways to get rid of various problems in their life, we always tend to go for the silver bullet kind of fix, something that will help us immediately, or if it doesn't, we'll try going on to the next thing. And I believe that that is a kind of self-damaging way to go about things. It's a sort of toxic mindset. Larry here knows that you should be patient. Your ear or ears will become confused at times, but perseverance is the key. After a while, you'll see results. I know you will. It's just like exercise. I mean, you don't do one workout and then suddenly you have a buff body. It doesn't work that way. The vagus stimulation is very important, as acetylcholine is part of where the cure comes from. That's another good point. Man, Larry, you're full of excellent advice. Acetylcholine, that's something that I mentioned in the original video. It's pretty much what they say is one of the main reasons why the VNS does its thing, because acetylcholine and these other chemicals, when released into the brain, they help stimulate the brain to kind of reboot itself. I don't know all the technical aspects, but that's what they say. So, let's see now. Starbuck4U2 says, I loaded the program and set it up the way you suggested. Everything worked as described, but when I tried to get to the frequency of my tinnitus, I could not hear any sound, knowing my hearing loss is in the tinnitus range. So if I can't hear the frequency, how would I know where to set the frequency? I didn't fully understand what he meant by that when I first read it. Because, I mean, if you can't hear your tinnitus, then how would you know that you have it? But I don't know. Maybe that's not what he meant. If I can't hear the frequency, how would I know where to set the frequency? I guess by that he means the tone, and maybe he means that it's overlapping his tinnitus. So I don't know. Maybe he has trouble identifying exactly what tone it is. And in a case like this, I would say that my variation on this therapy, you know, I didn't follow the original paper exactly. And what they actually did was they had two tones playing on either side, straddling, if you will, the tinnitus frequency. And I don't know how closely they did it, but if you know roughly the frequency that your tinnitus is at, and I'm sure they have some way of identifying that in a medical setting, they would be able to put tones on either side of it. But if you're trying to self-identify your tinnitus tone, maybe you'll be able to ballpark it, but you won't be able to get the exact frequency. And I think as long as you find roughly the frequency of your loudest tone, you'll be able to make some progress. So just try the best you can, basically, Starbuck, and go from there. And I think at some point you'll see some improvement. Just go up and down. Just try one frequency, do the exercise a few times. If you don't notice any improvement, but also if it doesn't get any worse, try one a little higher or lower. And I think at some point you'll notice some progress. Pugum says, Audacity is much easier to use to generate tones. Well, maybe it is Pugum's, but Audacity isn't what I have, and like I said, you could just watch the video and get the principles and use it with whatever software you want. Know what I mean? Jersey Bird says, and this is a comment that was particularly motivating for me. He says, thank you for this very excellent video and instructions. I'm a physiologist and a musician with tinnitus, and your setup and practice seems pretty on the mark with the clinical treatments that are being used for it. Well, I guess you as a physiologist would probably know that. And so I thank you for letting me know that I'm not entirely a moron for just making this off-the-cuff original video that I did without really having the proper training or anything like that. I was sure that I was going to get chastised for that, but really I figured if it worked for me, it's probably going to work for some other people, and I had no idea it would be that successful. There's one more comment that I'd like to mention here before we finish off, and it is kind of the negative side of things. Gary V says, after setting up your tone generator, I see my tinnitus is around 9,000 to 9,500 hertz. Problem is, I tried your method and turned the volume up just to the point where I could hear the tone more than the ringing in my brain. Tried the exercise for a minute or so. Ringing was worse after I stopped. A few days later, I not only have a sore gut, but the ringing is worse, and I know it will take weeks to settle back down to the previous level. My advice is don't risk it. I should know better. Well, Gary, you know, all these other people kind of counteract that, and like I said, there is a small portion of the population which, unfortunately, I'm sorry that that my method wasn't able to help you. Perhaps the other method, the more scientific one, would help you, but I don't know exactly what they were doing, unfortunately. And as far as I'm concerned, the way I did it was more intuitive. It would be easier for people to follow, and thankfully for most people it worked. And I read something like 90% of people have success, and for whatever reason, something like 10% of people will not be helped by this sort of therapy in the first place. So unfortunately, you may be one of those people, or it's also possible that you could have used one of the incorrect types of waveforms, like the sawtooth or the square wave, which is kind of like using a bludgeon on your brain. So you might want to make sure about that, and make sure that you use the sine wave. And it seems like you tried to be careful, at least. So I'm not placing any blame on you for doing things incorrectly. I just should have been more careful in warning people, first of all. One more comment. Stephen Michael Barnes says, if I could rate this, I'd give it 5 stars. I developed a high-pitched ringing in my ears that was becoming very annoying, even distracting. I did some research on tinnitus, which was informative, but nothing really helpful until I tried the steps in this video. It was remarkable. The first session almost cleared it up completely. Yeah, that was my experience too, Stephen. I made a 1-minute sound file, which I listened to with headphones. Since then, I've used this once a day for 4 days, and at times the ringing is either gone or greatly reduced. And that's great to hear. That's why I do this. That's why I go to the trouble of doing this. I'm sorry I haven't made any follow-ups for so long, but really I'm only just gaining my confidence at doing this whole kind of video tutorial type thing in such a personal way, talking about such personal issues as health and all this stuff. It's required a lot of research because, you know, so much science is involved. I don't want to mislead people. I don't want to give people false hope, and I don't want to misrepresent the science of all this stuff. So that's why it's taken me this long, and finally here I am. So he finishes by saying, while I'm willing to experiment with alternative therapies, I'm not somebody who blindly accepts pseudoscience. Well, I'm glad that you're not, and I'm glad that you don't see this as pseudoscience. I always try to be as careful as I possibly can. So this actually worked for me, and quickly. Thank you to Voxhouse. Voxhouse is the previous name of my channel before I changed it to Inner Worlds. And as I describe in the previous video to this one, what are inner worlds, that goes into all the stuff related to why I changed the channel name, and gives you an introduction to what I'm going to be doing in following videos. In the next video after this one, I'm going to talk about these ancient ways that humankind has been doing vagus nerve stimulation therapy, and how we have been meditating in many ways using sound in order to affect our brain waves. And I think you'll probably find that interesting, so stay tuned. Thanks. for watching, and I hope you guys find some relief using these new, quicker methods. Maybe you've already found stuff like this, but I wanted to go over it and go over some of the stuff that I missed the first time around and let you know that I'm still on this. We're still researching and we're making new advances. Hopefully this application for iPhone and Android, if somebody wants to come along and offer porting it, this is going to be a free app. Hopefully we make some progress over that soon. I know James is a busy guy, and but maybe in a few months we'll have something ready. But yeah, progress is being made for everybody, not only the people with a simple tinnitus tone, but also more complex cases. So I just want to let you guys know that there's hope. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.